Her name was on the manifest, but not in the room. While the team finalized flight positions and ran last checks inside, she remained outside the planning bay, unnoticed, uninvited. No one said she was cut. No one needed to. She was simply left there quiet, prepared, and seemingly irrelevant. Then a single voice came through the commnet. Calm. Specific. Asking for a revision no one had considered. It didn't come from inside the room. It came from above it. And then everything changed. From which city in the world are you watching this video today? If this story intrigues you, please consider subscribing to hear more untold stories of extraordinary service and the heroes who walk among us, never asking for the recognition they deserve. The air above Falcon Ridge shimmered with heat, though the sun hadn't fully cleared the edge of the mountains. Out on the tarmac, the F-35s gleamed like weapons pulled from stone. Fuel trucks hissed. Someone slammed a canopy. The hangar doors, wide open, cast long shadows across the flight line. At the far end, a lone figure moved at a pace that didn't match the morning's urgency. Her boots made little sound. Her helmet was cradled in the crook of one arm. Her gloves looped carefully through the other. Talia had been on the roster for 3 years. She'd flown every sortie logged under Echo Viper and never missed a blockout window. Her call sign was Sunday, earned during an early exercise when she timed a flight path so precisely it bypassed the opposing team's radar net by 100.0 seconds. At the time, it had been a compliment. Lately, it was used with a smirk. Inside the briefing room, the other pilots leaned over tablet screens and replay monitors. Someone bumped the projector calibration, and the overlay jittered for half a second. No one noticed. The room smelled faintly of black coffee and boot rubber. A chalkboard in the back still held yesterday's flight diagram. The lines curved like a musician's score. Altitude notes and threat zones scribbled in faded marker. Talia stood near the edge of the table, flipping through a slim notebook that didn't belong to any standard issue kit. The cover was soft from use. Inside were drawn grids, altitude rhythms, hand-sketched terrain folds, and notes that lined up more like sheet music than mission logs. She made one small mark with a pen and closed the book with care. Lieutenant Harris dropped into the seat beside her and bumped her elbow as he adjusted his headset. He said, with a grin that didn't ask for an answer, "You flying on Sunday again?" "Sunday. She's always flying Sunday," someone else said from the other side of the room. "Even on Thursday." The room laughed. Talia didn't. On the big screen, a replay from yesterday's sortie rolled in slow motion. Her flight path traced across the ridgeline with eerie consistency, hugging the terrain without spiking the radar overlay once. The route had been manually calculated. She had adjusted it mid-air when crosswind data changed between checkpoints. She had said nothing about it afterward. Captain Lin watched with her arms crossed. "It's clean," she admitted, "but sterile. I wouldn't want that on a live run." Lieutenant Harris scoffed. "It's not even flying. It's gliding on autopilot with good manners." Another pilot chimed in. She probably praised before every yaw input. The laughter didn't fade as the clip ended. A new pilot named Cooper, fresh from a different wing, asked if Sunday always flew like that. Harris shook his head. "She's not flying. She's managing airflow. No muscle. No risk." Outside the room, Talia walked the length of Hangar 4 alone. Inside, techs ran diagnostics. Flight crew loaded SIM data onto tablets. Someone tuned a helmet HUD. She passed each without pause. Her gloves hung neatly from her belt. She didn't wear the standard clip. She used a loop knot she had learned during mountain orientation. By the crew lockers, a young pilot named Reese struggled with his pre-flight chart. He'd been studying her notes since arrival. He tried to mimic her timing. He even paused at turns, breathing in rhythm. But the result always felt forced. Yesterday, he overshot a canyon apex and clipped a simulated ridge point. The system flagged it as a crash. He said the wind data was off. Talia hadn't commented. Back in the hangar, she checked the trim on her aircraft manually. She didn't trust the automated checklist completely. The system often read zero drift even when she felt micro-oscillations in the pedal tension. She ran her hand under the seat rail, checking for latch friction. Her pre-flight system hummed in a tone she could hum back from memory. She had once explained to a crew chief that she timed her throttle rise to the cabin pressurization hiss, adjusting pitch to match the bleed valve rhythm. He thought she was kidding. She wasn't. The ops board above the lockers updated with a soft beep. New sortie assignments. Her name appeared third down. Sunday. Target grid 3. Same region. Same altitude. No change. Captain Lin passed behind her and paused. "Try something dynamic this time," she said. "Command wants proof of aggression profiles." Talia didn't look up. The corridor allows 3 seconds of climb at that interval. Beyond that, the ridge echo rebounds into the threat range. Lin raised one eyebrow. "And I won't waste seconds I don't need." Lin walked on, muttering something about rhythm pilots and choir stalls. Talia picked up her helmet. The visor hadn't been polished. She liked it that way. It meant she could focus without catching glare from her own face. Her patch was tucked inside the lining, not displayed. Sunday, in block letters, stitched by hand. She entered the flight line without speaking. Her walk was slow, exact. Someone from the tower window said she looked like she was walking into a chapel. Harris, standing near the tarmac coffee cart, smirked as she passed. She probably thinks silence is an airspeed indicator. By the time she reached the F-35, the others were still reviewing footage from a failed test run. Harris had tried a showman's barrel roll during terrain lockout and overcorrected into shadow. The simulation froze. The room had gone quiet for half a second. Then he laughed it off. Talia ran one hand along the wing. Her glove creased just slightly against the metal, then lifted. She spoke once, only to the crew chief nearby. "Fuel check good." He gave her a nod and stepped back. Inside the cockpit, her movements were practiced. She didn't rush. Her fingers danced from switch to screen to dial like someone moving across a piano in rehearsal, not performance. She checked altitude bleed rate, then adjusted her own seat height to match the horizon line she expected to ride. The canopy closed with a slow hiss. The engine spooled in rhythm. Back in the room, the others watched her aircraft taxi to hold. No chatter on the comms, no flare from the rudder or throttle pulse, just steady movement, wheels precise. The kind of flying that didn't earn cheers, the kind that never missed. Someone said she was too chill to fly combat. No one said she was ever wrong. The ops tent smelled like canvas, coffee, and heat. One of the floor fans clicked as it rotated, stirring dust across the edge of the topographic map spread over the planning table. The lighting was poor, just a battery of clip-on LEDs rigged above the tent beams. And the glare left shadows in all the wrong places. Most of the room was gathered around the main projection screen, where a live feed from an overhead drone had just gone dark. They had lost contact with Recon Ridge Bravo, a forward team on observation duty in the Katura Basin. No satellite communication, no drone relay, no environmental telemetry. One report mentioned a debris collapse. Another said signal jamming. No one was sure. What was clear was that a team of 5 had not checked in at their scheduled mark, and the weather window was closing fast. Captain Lin stood beside the monitor with arms crossed. No signal from the recon team. "Last ping placed them here," she said, tapping the edge of the grid with her pen. "We've got a 3-mile corridor, 0 satellite, and heat anomalies on both sides." Lieutenant Harris leaned over the table and pointed to a ridge pass near the center of the grid. "If we push a low fly, we can probably thread that saddle. Come in hard and flare the ridge for visuals." Command hesitated. A few others murmured agreements. Someone brought up flight risk, wind shear, terrain reflection, the usual arguments in gray zones. Talia stood off to the side, her arms folded lightly over her flight notes. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't interrupt. When the room paused, she spoke. "There's a blind corridor along the north slope," she said. 32 seconds between echo returns. It's thermally unstable for satellite pings, but navigable under visual mapping. The room didn't react right away. Then someone snorted. "Sunday's bringing scripture again." She ignored it. Her fingers brushed the edge of her notebook. "If we enter at 73 knots with a left roll on marker 2, the terrain folds allow a climb and pivot with 0 radar bleed." Lieutenant Harris turned toward her. And what's the window? 81 seconds. If you miss the turn, the heat bloom traps the signature. He made a low whistle. Sounds like a metronome drill, not a mission. The others chuckled. Captain Lynn didn't smile. She tapped her stylus against the board. That's one option. What else? Lieutenant Reyes stepped forward. Louder. More presence. We punch it straight. Thermal instability won't matter if we're fast. Hit hard and sweep south. Team gets eyes on us. We haul out. Command nodded. Lynn looked at the notes again. All right. Reyes takes the run. Harris rides wing. Sunday. Prep contingency logistics. Talia didn't argue. She just nodded once, closed her notebook, and stepped back from the table. The mission loaded fast. Reyes suited up with a grin. Harris double-checked his fuel load. Talia packed a secondary medkit and laid out recovery gear by hand. No one asked her about her map. No one took the corridor she had drawn seriously. From the watch deck, she saw their jets launch clean. The sky looked deceptively still. 27 minutes later, both aircraft returned early. No contact made. Low visibility, high crosswind, partial sensor blackout. They had aborted. Inside the tent. The voices were quieter now. No one looked directly at her. The screen showed nothing but a static grid and a timestamp. A line of text near the bottom blinked in red. Mission aborted. Weather rolling in. Talia poured herself a cup of tea from the thermos beside the field server. She didn't drink it, just held it for the warmth. On the screen beside the flight board, her name had been listed briefly as standby. Then it disappeared. She walked back to the edge of the room and retrieved her notebook from the bin. Her annotated map, marked with second counts and timing bars, had been folded once. The crease cut through her original ingress point. No one had asked her to explain the corridor again. She didn't offer. Captain Lynn walked past her without stopping. They want a storm, not a ritual, she said under her breath. Talia watched the screen as the weather shutter began closing across the satellite lens. A light vibration passed under her boots as a generator kicked on. She set her cup down, untouched. The steam had stopped rising. In the far corner of the tent, a technician reset the drone feed. Static flared and cleared. No signal. Outside. The sky was darkening. A low rumble rolled off the mountains like a held breath. Talia stood longer than she needed to, watching the screen. No one called her name. No one asked what she would have done differently. But the corridor still lived in her head. Each turn timed. Each climb counted. 32 seconds between echoes. 81 to the pivot. All she needed. By the time the base lights dimmed to night cycle, most of the pilots had cleared the flight rooms. The squadron lounge sat empty, chairs half turned from their last use, tablet chargers still blinking on standby. The sim lab hallway was dark, save for the low green glow of a status panels, blinking once every few seconds like a slow heartbeat. Talia moved through it without sound, her boots soft against the rubber flooring. She tapped her badge at the sim door and waited for the lock to disengage. Inside, the air was cooler. The simulator pods loomed like sleeping engines. Most hadn't been used since afternoon drills. One near the back had a small red tag on the console maintenance hold for recalibration, but the others sat idle. She didn't need motion feedback. Not tonight. She settled into the control station, not inside a pod, but at a terrain console. A projection of the Keturah Basin loaded on the horizontal table in front of her. The topography rose and fell in rendered relief, every ridgeline and thermal bloom mapped in color gradient. She pulled her notebook from her jacket and laid it open beside the controls. The pages looked like sheet music, narrow bars divided by second counts, curve notes scribbled in pencil, altitude lines drawn clean with a ruler's edge. Her headset clicked softly as she adjusted the band. No mic active, no sound output. She toggled visual markers only. The corridor came into focus. She slowed the sim to 1/3 speed and pressed play. 1 count for the turn, 2 for the stall margin, 3 for the rise. Her breathing synced to the entry. She didn't look at the screen so much as feel it. timing the movement with the slow rhythm of breath in, hold, exhale, the same way she had practiced years ago in low-oxygen drills when instrument lag was common. Her left glove sat on the console beside a metronome she had brought from her locker. It didn't tick anymore, but she kept it there anyway. A reminder. When she first started flying, she used to run timing drills with it by hand, clicking rhythm into every maneuver until it stopped feeling separate from her. Across the room, one of the doors hissed open. The light from the hall cut a square across the floor, then narrowed. A voice followed quietly. "You still running that thread? Sunday." It was Reese. Younger. Well-meaning. Always a little too loud in the morning. He didn't step far inside. "I heard they pulled you from the roster," he said. "You don't have to prove anything." Talia didn't pause the sim. The terrain shifted slowly. She traced a pen across one edge of the notebook, adjusted a mark by a half-second, and kept breathing. He waited a moment. Then, quietly, "You know they'll never see it if it doesn't come with fire." She didn't answer. Not because she disagreed, but because she didn't need fire. Reese nodded once, though she didn't see it. "All right," he said. "Good luck. Sunday." The door closed behind him. The hallway light vanished. She rewound the sim by 40 seconds and ran it again. This time faster, 3/4 speed, at full velocity. She wouldn't have time for corrections. Every mark had to land. Her pen tapped once on the edge of the page, then underlined a curve labeled Rise 6. She made a small circle beside it. The notebook looked like a musician's margin rhythm notes on borrowed terrain. Her locker back in the barracks held the original copy of that sheet. It had started as music, real music, an old score her mother once used for warm-ups. Talia had drawn over it in blue ink first as a joke, then as habit. Now, it read like gospel. Pitch markings became climb rates and rests became drift. She had memorized the corridor as a tempo long before she knew its name. Back at the console, she toggled weather overlays. Cloud encroachment was rising. She calculated degradation at the pivot turn 800.0 meters above floor, wind cross at 230. Too fast. She'd missed the slide window. Too slow. The heat plume would blind the thermal cam. She marked both options. Then she drew a new line, a cleaner one that no HUD would show. When the sim flickered just once, she didn't flinch. She had flown through worse. In Haiti, the projector would reset mid-run, and she would keep flying blind, counting by breath alone. Inhale, 1, turn, 2, climb, 3. The sim room felt colder now, not from temperature, but from stillness, a practiced, absolute stillness. She ran the full corridor once more, then stood. Her notebook closed with the soft sound of well-worn paper. She picked up her glove, turned the metronome once, and watched it tick for the first time in years. One beat, then still. The sky was still black when Talia stepped onto the flight line. A low wind moved across the tarmac, curling dust along the runway markings. Most of the base still slept. The tower ran on reduced personnel, skeleton crew and night watch only. The hangar lights buzzed in cycles, their glow washing the airstrip in pale amber. She walked without haste, helmet in one hand, gloves in the other, her patch tucked out of sight. Juliet 8 sat in the far lane, cold and quiet. A ground crew tech named Ayo raised an eyebrow when he saw her. He said she wasn't on the board. His voice wasn't accusatory, only puzzled. She replied that she was logging a diagnostics run. The storm window was closing. Ayo hesitated, then nodded once. The fuel was still loaded from yesterday. He asked if she wanted startup help. She said she had it. Inside the cockpit, she moved by rhythm. Each toggle, each adjustment, matched to breath. 1 for the canopy seal, 2 for power, 3 for pitch trim, 4 for nav feed, muted. She tapped the tempo sheet she had taped to the side console. Not a checklist. Just strokes of pen over staff lines. It wasn't official, but it was hers. The HUD flickered once as systems synced. She disabled it. Too much interference on the corridor. Her eyes would serve better than the screen. At 0512, her transponder pinged the tower. A junior controller frowned at the console and asked who filed Juliet 8. That wasn't a test slot. The shift lead yawned and guessed it was a data sync ghost. Let it ride. If it moved again, wake ops. At 0516, Juliet 8 moved. Talia rolled past the edge of the active line, crossing into the eastern ingress route. Her wheels lifted with no afterburn, just smooth, quiet rise, low angle. She reached altitude below standard corridor height and dropped another 50 meters to mask against terrain. Her oxygen hissed once. The cabin settled into full press. Her breathing synced. Inhale. 1. Hold. 2. Release. 3. Align. 4. The first thermal spike came at marker 9. She rotated left, rolled into the drift, and counted. 32 seconds. The heat layers moved like waves, shimmering invisible patterns across her canopy. She adjusted pitch using only fingertip pressure. Back in the control tower, a tech leaned over the radar screen. There was a blink in Sector Delta 7. Could be bleed-through. The lead controller leaned in and asked what asset. The reply came after a pause. Faint tag. Looked like Sunday. They stared. No one had cleared Sunday. The tech tapped again. She was there. Dead zone echo. No uplink. Just movement. The controller picked up the phone and told them to get command. Talia couldn't hear any of it. Her comms were dark. Her HUD was off. Her world narrowed to the pulse under her glove and the rhythm of the air bouncing off the cliffs. She reached the midpoint of the corridor, the pivot point. She counted backward this time. 4, 3, 2, now. She rolled again, catching the underdraft at just the right second, her wings leveled within a meter of thermal bleed. No sound but her breath and the low tone of the airframe. She passed below the last echo point, then climbed, slow and angled, toward the extraction ridge. Back at ops, the radar feed glitched again, then reappeared. She's climbing. Someone said, "Who flies that quiet through thermal?" No one answered. The mountain range folded around her, each rise a new measure. Talia didn't think of failure. She thought of tempo. This beat. Then that one. Her pen had mapped every fold. Her mind knew each step. She flew like someone who'd walked the route on foot. At 600 meters, the canopy began to frost. She adjusted air mix manually, not waiting for sensor lag. Her visor stayed down, vision sharp. Another spike. She dipped left, coasted into the heat bloom, and vanished from radar again. A controller swore. She was off the scope. Who flies that high in blackout? Someone answered. Someone who's not asking permission. Talia saw the cliff marker ahead. It came sooner than expected. Wind shift. She pivoted early, brushing the edge of stall. The airframe warned once, then stilled. Her right hand steadied the yoke. Her left traced the tempo. Breath, adjust, roll, hold. She cleared the ridge. Below. The basin spread in low shadow. She scanned for flare or beacon. Nothing. But the corridor pointed here. Her math pointed here. Then, a flicker. Not light, but movement. A pattern in the tree line. She dropped throttle, hovered by control, venting alone. Too much noise and she'd tip. Too little and she'd stall. The terrain shifted under her. Her eyes stayed on the slope. A figure emerged. Then 2. Then 5. She opened comms just enough to say one thing. Package visual. I've got you. The team leader replied, crackling, that they thought she was a drone. No, she said, just Sunday. She stabilized the platform. No winch, no time. But she didn't need either. The terrain allowed one moment of balance, enough for the team to make contact. They moved, one by one. Back in the tower, Sunday's tag reappeared. She's pulling out, someone whispered. How? On memory. The ridge rose ahead. Wind was sharper now, less stable. Her margin was gone. But the pattern held. 32 seconds, 4 beats of breath, then pull. She cleared it. The dead zone behind her fell silent. The basin opened up below her like a broken plate, uneven and full of edges. Cracks ran through the slope in jagged seams, each one distorting her altitude sensors and reflecting false positives into the nav feed. But she wasn't using the feed. Her HUD stayed dark. Her fingers rested light on the controls. Breath. 1. Pitch. 2. Adjust. 3. Hold. 4. Talia guided the jet through the shadow pocket behind the ridge. Thermal bloom curled off the rocks in strange bands, visible only as distortion in the glass. She flew through it without hesitation. The notebook in her jacket dug into her side, its corners worn from use. She didn't need to read it. Every line was in her memory. The signal flare came late, dim, barely visible, a blink of color just above the tree line. She locked eyes on it and counted 3 seconds before adjusting. Her altitude was too high to stall, but low enough that a single mistake would shear the wing on stone. The team was dug in behind a split of rock, tucked into a hollow that gave no return. No laser guidance, no beacon pulse, just bodies, shadows, and one faint hand signal from the bluff. Talia matched to it with perfect timing. She dropped the crate from the visual altitude using analog alt-red and pressure drift. The team's comm cracked to life. They asked who was on approach. There was silence. Then her voice, level and low. Sunday. A pause followed. Then another voice, closer to the mic, said they had to be joking. Talia opened her throttle by a hair. No need to shout, no need to explain. A second flare fired. Brighter. Injured team member, slumped and unmoving, carried by 2 others. The pickup was never supposed to be part of this. There was no platform, no hoist. The wind here shifted every 15 seconds. Talia didn't waver. She dropped lower, drifted just over stall margin. The airframe whined softly. She brought the jet into hover on vent thrust, using control bleed to steady her pitch against the terrain gust. Back at base. They lost her signal completely. No return, no radar, nothing but static and trace echoes from her earlier ingress. Where is she? Someone asked in the tower. She dropped out. No comms, no visuals. We've got nothing. But the camera at one of the relay towers picked up a shadow passing through low fog. Not a heat image. Not clear. Just a blur moving in rhythm, like it belonged to the wind. Down at the basin, the recon team loaded the injured man onto a field sling. One of them looked up and whispered that she wasn't flaring. She can't, said the sergeant. She's riding the lift arc. The team moved under her with practiced speed. One by one, they attached the rigging to her temporary drop line, a side channel of static cord she had looped down with one manual release. When the last hand gave the signal, she rose. No burst, no throttle spike, just clean lift, matched to breath and range and terrain brake. Her cockpit remained silent. One breath for altitude, one for silence, one for the climb. The sensors pinged false. They told her she was drifting. She wasn't. She knew the rhythm. Wind shear hit the side channel. She adjusted 4 degrees. Her path held. A tower controller stared at the reappearing signal line on the command screen. She's surfacing. The ops commander leaned forward. That flight path, how is she correcting in that mess? She's not correcting, came the reply. She's following something. The climb path was narrow and off-axis. No one flew it. No simulation permitted it. But Sunday followed her tempo, and the jet obeyed. The terrain blinked past her canopy in close rhythm. The cliff edge came faster than expected. She shifted throttle, vented spin, and tilted without stall. The recon team saw the nose tip vanish into sky. One of them muttered, "She's gone." But in the tower, the radar line drew again. A pulse, then another. A climb trace not based on altitude, but on return margin. "She's riding signal decay," said a technician, astonished. Talia's voice came through once, faint and shaped by static, returning with 5. Condition green. The base froze. Nobody spoke. Back in the sky, she brought the jet up and around the western fold. No HUD, just internal compass and breath. Her eyes stayed locked on a single line in the distance fog meeting dawn over the ridge. Her fingers rested near the notebook tucked inside her jacket. She didn't open it. She just let it press against her like a second heartbeat. She banked once to confirm the glide path. The descent would take 41 seconds. She could land blind if she had to. The ground crews scrambled to realign landing vectors. Controllers checked and rechecked runways. Juliet 8 wasn't expected back. Then they saw her. Low, steady, even. She held steady. The path behind her closed like a tide. No lights, no noise, just clean return. The kind no one trained for. The kind only rhythm could teach. The ground team watched her fade into the cloud line, quiet as she came. Back at base, the controller whispered again. She never missed. The rain had started by the time she landed. Not a storm, just a slow, even fall that glazed the tarmac in silver. Juliet 8 taxied in low and quiet, its fuselage streaked with heat bloom and soot from the basin updrafts. The canopy fogged under pressure and cleared again. No chatter on approach, no fanfare, just the wheels touching down in rhythm. The kind of rhythm that didn't ask for approval. In the radar room, 2 junior controllers watched the replay. The telemetry logs, once scattered with false drops, now stitched clean. One leaned forward and asked the question without thinking. Who flies like that? The other answered softly, Sunday. She never missed. The ops board updated itself line by line. Talia's call sign shifted from contingency support to mission lead. The timestamp flickered once, then locked. No alert was triggered, no announcement made, but the name stayed. Outside, the tower crew stood behind the glass, watching the jet come to a stop. A few pilots gathered near the lockers, coffee half finished, eyes fixed forward. No one spoke. The jokes were gone. So was the noise. The flight line belonged to her now, and everyone knew it. Talia climbed down without hurry. Her boots struck the wet pavement, darkened from rain and engine wash. Her helmet stayed under her arm, her gloves tucked in at the wrist. Her patch was visible this time. Not loud, just there. She walked the same path she always did, but slower, not from fatigue, from weight. The kind of weight you carry when you know no one will ever see you the same way again. In the hangar, she set the helmet down beside her old rhythm notes. The notebook was still damp from sweat and flight. The page hadn't smudged, every count still in place. Her wingtip lights blinked once, casting soft reflections on the rain-slick concrete. A crew chief stepped out from the far edge of the hangar and paused. He didn't salute. He just watched. That seemed like the right thing to do. Inside the briefing room, the screen replayed the climb path again. Each second matched to an impossible turn. The instructors who once flagged her for flying too low now said nothing. They understood. Sunday hadn't taken the mission. She had become it. A pattern no one else could repeat. That night, no one filed a report. The footage spoke louder. Her name stayed on the board long after the room emptied. They had called her Sunday. Now they meant it. She was never the loudest in the room, never the one to interrupt or demand a seat at the table. But when everything around her faltered, when the plans fell apart and the storm closed in, she moved with certainty. Not because anyone asked her to, but because she knew what had to be done. What others mistook for hesitation was actually rhythm. What they called passivity was precision. This was not a story of spectacle. It was a story of discipline, of quiet mastery, and of knowing your worth even when others overlook it. If you've ever felt unseen or mistaken for being less because you choose calm over noise, this story was for you. Take a moment to reflect. We invite you to share your thoughts in the comments and follow if you'd like to hear more stories like this, where strength speaks not through volume, but through action.